we could never have imagined 4 English teams in the 2 European finals. The full English seems to be the headline that most of the papers are going with. They'll be breakfasting in Baku, Arsenal and Chelsea. They'll be munching in Madrid, Liverpool and Spurs. Ian, I know you were in Valencia calling Arsenal polishing off the job against the Valencia at the Mestalla, but give us your sense of the whole week and how it unfolded from your perspective. Ever seen anything like it?
Well, I don't know. There was that quote, wasn't there, from Gary Lineker a few years ago, that football was a game the 22 players went about their business and in the end the Germans always won. Well, it seems this season that it's written in the stars that the English teams will somehow come out on top, even against all the odds. I mean, who could have thought that Liverpool would turn that around from 3 goals down against Lionel Messi and Barcelona, that Tottenham would score with almost the last kick of the game in Amsterdam. I mean, even going into the Europa, Chelsea looked like they were going to lose that penalty shootout against Eintracht Frankfurt until the last couple of kicks. And even Arsenal, though they got the job done handsomely in the end, they were behind in both the home and away legs against Valencia early on in the game, still went through. I mean, it wasn't very long ago that people were saying about English football, well, yeah, it's a great Premier League, but they're behind Real Madrid, they're behind Barcelona, they're behind Bayern Munich, and maybe even Juventus as well. There's catching up to do. Somehow, it's England's year, but I don't think anybody should get carried away that this is some kind of huge European takeover.
People tend to want to do that, though, don't they, Craig? But fine margins, and we were talking such fine margins.
Yeah, and it's cyclical. I always believe it's cyclical, and yeah, of course there's money involved as well, and you buy better players, but...
Is it cyclical or is it financial? Is this a money thing?
I think a little bit of both. Well, it's not just a money thing, because if it was just a money thing, PSG and Man City would be in the final. So it's not just a money thing. There's a quality. It is cyclical to some extent as well. Teams have their day, and you know, the years ago it was the Italians. You know, always the Italians. You used to follow them. Then the Spanish at the time, and English teams at the time. When Man United were getting some success, Chelsea had some success in it. So they did have a bad time in Europe a few years ago, and it did not paint the Premier League in a very good picture. When you're trying to sell the brand around the world, is this global juggernaut, and your teams are getting walloped in Europe, it kind of makes it a harder sell. So this is all round much better for English football, but also much better for the Premier League as well when they're coming to sell packages.
Julien, I bet you thought you had seen the comeback of the year watching PSG disintegrate to Manchester United, and yet here we are talking about two bigger comebacks. What was your perspective on the week?
Yeah, quite incredible. I think we can't forget either that last season there was 5 English clubs in the last 16, for example, which was by far the most represented country. Yet only 2 made it to the quarterfinals, and Liverpool and City played each other, and Liverpool then went all the way to the final. But already I thought last season you could see that somehow there was that the English teams in Europe were going from strength to strength, and they were getting much better, and maybe the import of foreign managers like Pochettino, like Klopp, bringing their own staff with it, which worked maybe better on diet, better on fitness work and things like that, to get those squads ready to compete both in the Premier League with that intensity that it takes, and also in the Champions League in those key games that arrive in March or April or beginning of May, which was one of the reasons that in the past we said, well, English clubs struggle in Europe because they're too tired from the Premier League. And it seems that this season and a bit last season, they're fitter than everyone else, they're more ready than everyone else, and maybe that's down to what those coaches have brought to the Premier League.
Exactly. The sports scientists were saying, if we don't get this 3-week break in the Premier League, we're never going to be able to compete in Europe. Hold on a minute. What's happened here? Because I've not seen one person, or I've hardly seen any person talk about a winter break. But when there was a struggle, it was the first topic of conversation about why the teams were not doing well. When I think that was too easy. Obviously everybody wants a rest and can help them a rest, but I think it was too easy just to look at that and say, that's the reason why the teams are struggling. There was a deeper rooted issue with that, and it was the quality of player, it was the understanding of going out of your league into Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and these countries, and play against teams at the time that were tactically superior.
I still can't get away from the fact that the top 6 in England do pretty much outspend everyone. Though I know fine margins. A post here, a Dembele chance there. It's a different conversation.
Yeah, without question, the English clubs do, and given the strength of the Premier League and their television rights, that can give the English clubs a huge head start and maybe widen the gap. But I think that's more a long-term issue than it is short-term. As of right now, I still think that the biggest clubs in Europe can contend with the majority of the English clubs, certainly in terms of commercial ability and attracting players. I also am agreeing with Craig. I think it's cyclical. These things come in roundabouts. And then how do you cater for two talents like Ronaldo and Messi? And how do you predict where they end up and how they affect their clubs? There are a number of different things that go into any one club or any league dominating European competition, as we've seen.
One little subplot to the Ajax Tottenham game was and you know, we talk about the Premier League and other leagues, how they help their teams. Before the first leg of that game, where Ajax was superb, they got a break the weekend before. However, over the second leg, they had to play in the cup final.
Yeah, that's right.
A few days before, not even a few days before. And whilst that's not taking anything away from Tottenham, they certainly looked leggy in that second half. They couldn't pick their legs up, Ajax, in the last 20 minutes. Yeah. And so little things like that, where it went their way and they played really well in London. They played well in the first half, but not in the second half after playing in a cup final a few days before. Yeah. So little things can make a big difference.
Julien, what's your thought on the big picture? Is this something cyclical we're looking at? England just in the ascendancy again, or is it purely down to pounds?
No, I think a bit of both, but I agree with the boys. I think football works in cycles. We've seen it before with the Italian domination, with then the Spanish domination. English clubs had a very good period as well when in 2008, for example, you had an all-English Champions League final, for example. So, I do believe it works in cycles, and next season, be interesting to see how many clubs first there are how many English clubs there are in the Champions League, for example, and how well they do. But I would expect them to keep being very strong and to keep going to the final again.
I would say one thing. Bearing in mind, my old club Celtic were the first British team and the cup lifted by Billy McNeill, who sadly passed away a week or two ago. They won it in 1967. It's been a hell of a long cycle since then for Scottish teams to try and get back. So it's cyclical.
There's a long cycle and there's the short cycle.
I'm waiting on it.
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
Ian, it sounds a silly question. Are you looking forward to these finals? Are these going to be good finals? The reason I ask is finals involving two teams from the same country traditionally haven't been that great. Is this going to be an exception to the rule?
I think the word sort of from UEFA, though nobody would say it officially, is they don't really like having two finalists from the same country involved.
Yeah, they don't. By the way, and they don't like having the fans there either.
Well,
right?
No, apparently not. No, and they found some very odd venues as well. I mean, can anybody get a ticket to Baku or find an airline to take us there? That's another issue. But I don't know. Let's hope the games are good. We've had loads of drama so far. Liverpool, Tottenham, I imagine that's going to be a pretty tasty game. Yeah. Arsenal, Chelsea, well, they won one each in the Premier League this season, and they were both fairly good games.
You've been watching Dan Thomas when he comes on here and says, "Oh, these games at the weekend. Well, I'm not looking forward to them. They're going to be horrible. Oh, it's going to be negative." I mean, you've got Liverpool playing Tottenham, two of the best attacking teams in Europe, certainly in England. You've got Arsenal and Chelsea, who, by the way, can't defend. And if you watched. And they've both got good players going forward. And if you watch the very first game between Chelsea and Arsenal this season at Stamford Bridge, then you know this Europa League final in particular is not going to be a balanced affair. Because that could have
been 5-5 that game, Craig. That could have been 5-5 that game at Stamford Bridge.
It could have been. So I think they're going to be. Honestly, I think they're going to be great games.
Let's see what the odds makers think in terms of who's the favourite at each final. It's. Liverpool, who are the favourites in Madrid, 1-2 on, Spurs 6-4 to win the Champions League for the very first time on June the 1st. A few nights before, it is Chelsea who are favourites, 4-6 on. Arsenal can get just a little bit more than even money. That final on May the 29th in, yes, Baku.